Okay, we're in John the what? Fourth? John 4:49, right?
39.
39.
Don't go backwards.
That's right.
We can talk about raising hands again.
No, we're not going backwards, we're going forward.
That was a fun conversation.
Pastor Casey, you want to make an announcement about the advisory board
Yes.
and communion?
Yes. Yes. So we're not going to have our AB meeting Sunday evening, and we're going to skip March. I think that's what month we're in.
Yeah.
We're going to skip March for AB. So pass the word, please. Communion, we're going to push back. It won't be Sunday, April 1st because of the amount of new people we'll have. We're going to push it back a week. We don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable. And also the movie is 5 o'clock this Saturday, Passion of the Christ. If you haven't seen it, please show up. We're going to get the wall down for the movie and have it back up by Sunday morning, so you'll be able to see the whole screen, so don't worry about that. We're going to take care of that for you. All right, John 3, verse 39, or John 4, 39? 4, 39. All right, let's see. I think we can get through the rest of them. What do you guys think? All right, let's just jump around and start reading. From that city, many of the Samaritans believed in him because of the word of the woman who testified. He told me all things that I have done.
So when the Samaritans had come to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days.
And many more believed because of his own word.
They said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world."
After the 2 days, he went forth from there into Galilee.
For Jesus himself testified that a prophet hath no honor in his own country.
Then when he was come unto Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things that he did at Jerusalem at the feast, for they also went unto the feast.
And Jesus came again unto Cana of Galilee, where he made the water wine, and there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum.
When he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea and to Galilee, he went unto him and besought him that he would come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death.
Then Jesus said to him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will by no means believe."
The nobleman saith unto him, Sir, come down, my child die.
Jesus said to him, "Go, your son lives." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started off.
While he was still on the way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was living.
Then he inquired of them the hour when he began to get better. Then they said to him, "Yesterday at the 7th hour, the fever left him."
So the father knew that it was at the same hour in which Jesus said unto him, Thy son liveth, and himself believed in his whole house.
This is again the second miracle that Jesus did when he was come out of Judea into Galilee.
All right, good job, guys. Oh, there's my stool. I was like, where's my stool?
If it's sticky, sorry.
Yeah, it looks like there's glue and all kinds of stuff. It's all right. It's worth it for that thing. All right. So, from that city, many of the Samaritans believed in him because of the word of the woman who testified. He told me all things that I have done. So remember, Jesus left. We finished that last week. Jesus left. He went to this new city, right? And he shows up, and it tells us that in that city, many of these Samaritans, which we remember from several weeks, that the Samaritans, according to the Jews, were lower class. They were looked down upon. And so what we see is that Jesus comes into the city with all these Samaritans, and what we're told here is that many of these Samaritans believed. Why did they believe?
Because he proved himself.
Okay, but how do they know he proved himself?
Because the woman had come back and told him how he had told her whole life.
Right. Because the woman came back and told them, remember? And so again, I just want to stress how important it is for us to be leading people to Jesus. I was listening to a sermon earlier today by Adrian Rogers, and he was talking about the rapture coming and calling Christians home. And he said something that I never really thought of, and I didn't really realize how much it would be a part of tonight's lesson at the time. But what he said was, on that day of rapture, if you're still alive and you're called up into the air, is there going to be anybody else being called up into the air because of you? Wow. Are you going to look over and go, oh yeah, I just witnessed to that person. I led that person to Christ. That person I gave money and it helped them and led them to salvation. That person I showed up and changed their tire. Whatever it is that God uses us to do to lead people, to be a witness, is there anybody that you can say that you've helped lead to Jesus? Because Christ could come back right now. We could literally be called miraculously through this building up into the heavens and meet Him in the air. It literally could happen. There's nothing, no prophecy holding it back. What have you done? And I'm not asking that to you. I'm asking that to us. Because I instantly am like, ooh, wow. I mean, that hit me in the core part, right? In the soul. When he said that, I'm like, wow. Because they believed because of one woman. Think of the change that had to have happened for this woman who was on her 7th husband, or 6th husband, for these people to believe her. Right? Are we going to believe somebody like that?
She had to have an appearance about her that was different
I would agree.
than what they had seen from her before.
That's a good point. I agree with that. There had to have been something different, you know? Because think about it. She's like, this man. Well, what would people think? Oh yeah, here she goes, another man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, these people believed on Jesus because of this. Has that transformation happened in us? That we can do that? Sure. If you're saved.
Yeah, it's happened in us. We
Yeah.
just don't go and do it.
We just don't do it. Right.
I want to interject something else. Jesus, seeing that we don't, is, in a way, she was of a Jewish background. Because the Samaritans, according to what I read here, it says, were descendants of the Jews of the northern kingdom.
Yep.
And they intermarried.
Right.
And here's what she was most common for, was intermarriage, having
Yeah. Right.
husband.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the Jews looked down upon them because they had interbred and become a mixed race, and so they were looked down upon. And I didn't put that together, that correlation like that. The Samaritans had committed adultery, and so did she. That's what she was known for. That's good, thank you. I'm so proud of you guys studying and researching this stuff outside of Wednesday nights. I am. You don't know how happy this makes me. I mean, honestly.
He's always trying to be the teacher's pet. I mean, you know.
You gonna take that, Larry? This man wrestles bears. You wanna poke the bear?
They just told me in bill, I ain't paid him yet.
Uh-oh.
I bet if you go to Casey's office, there's a chart up there, and Larry's got all these little stars.
Man,
Little
that
smile.
was a zinger right there, buddy. Oh, goodness. So when the Samaritans came to Jesus, verse 40 here, They were asking him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. So this woman had made such an impact that they believed on Jesus and then didn't want him to leave. And here's the cool part about this, is he stayed with them 2 days. He didn't check his calendar. He didn't run off. He stayed with them. What do you think he did for 2 days? Witnessed?
Talk,
What?
talk.
Talked to them? Okay, what else?
T-A-U-G-H, talk.
Taught.
Taught. Okay. Okay, I'll say talk since you said taught.
Okay.
Witnessed, taught, talked. What else?
Guided.
Guided,
Did he do any killing?
healing. Think he told anybody else everything they'd done in their life?
Probably.
Maybe. We don't know. Probably.
Like he showed him that he didn't share with the prejudice.
Ah. He truly broke down that wall of prejudice that he didn't see them as lower class, as infidels. He saw them as people with souls who needed Jesus.
Don't you think that, I mean, if someone came and told me that I was with this man and he just told me my whole life, told me about my whole life, wouldn't that excite you to the point that you would want to know more knowledge and more intimacy with him?
No. Before I was saved,
I'd be embarrassed.
I'd be so ashamed.
Whoa.
I mean,
I think some people would have been scared of him in a way, thinking, how does he know all this if they were not a believer or knew something about it? It'd almost be like witchcraft or
Right.
something, you know.
right. But I see what you're saying. And for most of these people, I think that exactly what you're saying, the excitement and wanting to know more knowledge and wisdom and all that is what happened. And I think those who didn't believe were the ones who were ashamed like I was before and like other people in here, you know?
Right, just, when it says they besought him and asked him to tarry 2 more days. So apparently there was something that they heard or they saw or
Right.
that they just wanted more.
More, yeah.
And I think that's the way, most of us are like that. I mean, like in Bible study, when we study something and we get this little bit of knowledge that, we didn't have that before, we want more of it. That's why we keep coming back for more.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right, because look in verse 41, and John's right when he said that he was witnessing, because it says many more believed because of his word.
His own word.
He was out spreading the word of God, and people believed, many more. What's to look for, John?
Wouldn't you,
I just gave you credit, buddy.
well, I'm going to say, would be like comparing to someone that just started going to church and they got, the feeling everybody gets when they first come, or you've been out of it, took a vacation for a while and come back, it's like like, I can't wait to go back, but there's something there and I want to go, more of it. You think that would be about the same thing?
I think so.
Same feeling like a lot of these people got in there?
Yeah, I think so. And I still have that for this place, man. I still love coming. Every time. There's just so much excitement and fellowship and awesome stuff happening, and the Spirit of God is just moving here, and I love it. And I just,
Like I told
like it, I love it, I want some more of it. Wasn't that a song? But I'm talking about Jesus.
Like I told Larry, I've learned a lot on Wednesday night. I got a long way to go, but I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that.
From here.
I agree with that.
Brenda don't sometimes. I'm dead serious. We've had this discussion.
Don't drag me into this.
Brenda's like, I'm out. I want nothing in it.
And I think the way Jesus was, that even when he was just talking without necessarily trying to push it. He still was teaching through just his normal conversations and everything. There was always something that people were drawing from him
Yeah.
without it being like a sermon.
There you go, be like us sitting around here on Wednesday night, that everybody's got their opinion, and, you know, you might say something what clicks or a little bit different than.
And so they were saying to the woman, so now get this, don't miss this. She's still involved, right? She's still in the mix here. And so these people who were believing and following Jesus, they said to the woman, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves and know that this one is indeed the Savior of the world." Now you guys have heard me say this, I don't even know how many times. It doesn't matter if your parents go to church and they were saved. It don't matter if your spouse goes to church and they're saved. It don't matter if it's your kids, whoever. It's you. And this shows us right here. It took someone to get them to Jesus. But once they came to Jesus, they had to make that personal decision of relationship themselves. You know, you can draw a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? And these people, they came to Jesus, they were getting more of it, they were understanding, they were growing, and they went from believing her testimony to then knowing the testimony for themselves. You see that? It went from I believe what this person said, to a know-so salvation in Jesus.
Well,
They knew. Sorry, Janice.
that's okay, and even more, and know this is indeed the Christ,
Yeah,
the Savior of the world.
that's right.
I mean, just in that bit of time,
Yeah.
for 2 days,
Right.
they recognized that this is the Savior of the world.
Yeah.
It's not just the Christ, this is the Savior of
Yeah.
the world.
And so people want to know why they don't grow in a relationship. Look, you got to spend time with him. It's a relationship. You know, think about it this way. If you got a child who lives in China, you're probably not going to be very close to that child, right? You love that child. You'd love to see that child, but you just don't have that capacity, that ability to see that child on a regular basis. Now, if your child lives right next door to you and you see him every day, you know, for hours on end, or they live with you, you're going to be a lot closer to that child than that child in China. You don't love them any less, right?
No.
But that relationship isn't the same.
There's an intimacy.
That's right. That's right. And to know Jesus is to know growth.
Right.
Okay? If you know Jesus and he knows you, and you're close, you're building that relationship, you're going to grow in your walk. And you know, it feels like I'm preaching to the choir because you guys are here on a Wednesday night. You guys are faithful. You're always here. And you can see the growth in you guys. You know, you can see that because of your commitment, because of your relationship with the Lord. And that's what they had. They had that closeness, that intimacy. And that's how we grow yet today.
That's why you knew that Olivia was having trouble with her eyes. Otherwise, you wouldn't have paid any attention
That's right.
if you weren't that close to Olivia.
Amen. It's a good example.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I'd thought of that, Big Joe.
He gets a gold star in the slot, doesn't he?
Big Joe got some star on the wall. Uh-oh, Larry, he's catching up, brother.
He's gonna catch you, buddy.
Get moving.
Larry's like, what did I do today? And so after the 2 days in verse 43 here, he went forth from there into Galilee. So Jesus leaves this city in Samaria. He leaves the people he'd been witnessing to, and he goes into the city in Galilee, right? And it says in verse 44, "For Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country." Now What does that mean?
Most people do not feel that the people they've grown up with and have been around all their life really see the part of them that they want them to see. I mean, it's like, yeah, I know she's a Christian, or I know she goes to church, or whatever, but they really don't see that the relationship that you really have with Christ on a daily basis.
So the verse said, "For a prophet has no
Honor.
honor in his own country." So let me give you a personal example. When I got saved, I still worked with a bunch of people that I had partied with and done all that stuff with. They knew stories. They knew lots of stories. They still know stories. And still to this day, it doesn't happen very often anymore. But sometimes people like to get those stories going again of Casey, because there was a lot of them. And when I first got saved, it was all the time. Oh yeah, sure. Remember when you did this? Remember when you did that? Remember this? Remember that? And it was always trying to bring me down by reminding everybody of who I used to be. I had no honor. They didn't see me as a born-again believer. They didn't see me as a new creature in Christ. They still saw the old Casey. They still saw me the way I used to be. I had no honor in my country of that place I worked. Country. Whether that's in a small town or something like that. Yeah, go ahead, Davin.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of pointed that out because I never thought of that. But when I read this verse, I kind of thought it was like it's our duty to leave our country, to go and find more and bring more to Jesus. So it's like you have no honor to stay where you're at and continue to spread the word. It's your duty to move out to other areas to spread the word.
Selena's going to kill me when you guys move to Africa. I can see it now. You watch. You watch.
I'm going up north to Canada and grab them Inuits and bring them down.
Eh? And maybe that's what it means to some people. You know, what this means to one person in that situation might be different, you know. And so my last church was in a different county, and the person who took over after me was from that county. I wasn't. I was an outsider, right? And it was hard going into this place as an outsider. And now that we're filming, I'm trying to be very careful. So if anybody would happen to see that, nobody gets offended. You know what I mean? So anyways, and this person who took over after me really struggled with this verse right here, because he was like, you know, God didn't call me to this church because Jesus said no prophet has an honor in his own country. So he really struggled with that, really struggled. Ultimately, God showed him that it was okay. I've called you here, and you are going to have honor, and I am going to teach these people to honor you and respect you and all those sorts of things.
And I also kind of looked at that as a little bit of Jesus prophesizing that he wasn't going to be honored in his own country.
Amen. Amen.
That was what I took out of it.
Yeah, that's right. Because a few short years later, in Jerusalem,
Yeah.
you know, he went to the cross. His own country, right?
Yeah.
But did you find yourself being tempted when they're bringing up the stories of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The less mature I was, the easier it was to start joking around. Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, remember this, remember that. The more mature I became, the more committed to Christ I became, the less humor I found in it. The more insulted I became, the people kept bringing this up.
What did you do? Just tell them that God was in and this is now, or something like that, or?
I just smacked him in the face. No, I'm kidding. I just said, that's not who I am anymore. You know, I said, yeah, that's who I used to be, but God has changed me. I use it as a tool to witness.
I'd be more tempted to.
I figured that's why I said that. I figured. No, don't do that. That'll lose all credibility.
Everything you look for,
Be gone. Yeah. No, use it as a tool to witness, just to show them how God has changed you.
and by answering that, shows the growth.
Right.
It shows what he has done.
And so when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things that he did in Jerusalem at the feast, for they themselves also went to the feast. So he goes into Galilee, and all of a sudden these people who were at the feast, the Passover feast at Jerusalem, they saw what he did, the miracles, and all the people talking about him, and he shows up in Galilee. It's kind of like, a rock star showing up, right? You know when a famous person shows up and everybody just acts like they're crazy. Oh, that's what I imagine, except here, that's what should happen. That's doing it to Jesus is where that should happen. We should never do that to people. But Jesus, he deserves that, right? And so that's what they did, because they'd seen, they'd heard, they'd witnessed, they saw the testimony. So they received it. Again, going back to that witness. Do you see how intricate you are to other people's souls being saved? Are you starting to get that picture? It's all throughout the Gospels of Christians leading people to Jesus. And so they received him. And therefore he came again to Cana of Galilee. Where was that at? Remember? The wedding feast, right? Alright, so the first miracle happened at Cana that we know about, right? So he comes again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a royal official whose son was sick at Capernaum. And when he heard that Jesus had come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and was imploring him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Now, remember, the people received him, they'd heard the witness, they'd seen it for themselves, they knew what Jesus could do. He's back at Cana of Galilee, where he did his first miracle. He turned the water to wine, and this royal official, right? This guy who's got power, he's got money, he's got clout, hears of Jesus. He's back. So what's it say he does?
He besought him.
Huh?
Asked him to come and heal his child.
Asked him to come and heal him. But why? What was wrong with the kid? How close? Was he closer to life or closer to death? Closer to death, right? So, he's hanging on by a thread, it seems like, right? And so, Jesus said to him, unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply will not believe. Why would Jesus say this when this father, think about this, put yourself in his shoes. This father, son's on deathbed, comes up to Jesus pleading. I can just imagine him crying and pleading, right? Please heal my son. Jesus' response.
But when I first read that, the first thing that I thought was, there was a man of power.
There was what?
A man of power.
A man of power.
royalty,
Okay.
Okay? And very prideful. And I'm sure that man had really come low in order to see
Oh, yeah.
Jesus' help.
Right.
And when I read that, I thought, Jesus knew all about this before he ever even asked him. But I think how Jesus must have been so pleased to see that that man was willing to get rid of that pride and come to him and ask of him, even though he always had thought he was the only one. That they had met somebody that knew how
Who had real power. Yeah.
I
So do you think Jesus' statement was just to this official, or do you think it was to the crowd in general?
To everybody.
So why would he say this to them?
He knew their heart's conditions,
Okay, he knew their heart's condition, which was what?
whether they believed or not. He knew the ones that didn't or didn't believe.
He knew the ones that believed and didn't believe. Okay, what else?
You probably wondered why none of these people had sought him out until they were like this gentleman, his son was dying. And, why didn't you come to me before?
Okay,
But now they want something from me.
okay.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. I see this like, I was here before and performed a miracle. You guys have not believed on me, and now you want me to do another miracle so you will believe.
Okay.
There was maybe a little bit of sarcasm, they're trying to push him, just get him, make that decision. Because truthfully, if we'd have been there and seen him do one miracle, we would have believed and not hesitated when he come back, we already knew who he was.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that the reason why he says this is because he's like, the only time you guys ever want to worship me is when you need something.
It was rebuking.
Yeah, this guy's a high official. I guarantee you he's not a follower of Jesus, but yet when his son's on his deathbed, this guy comes running, jumps into Jesus' feet, says, save my son. It's like, why should I? Why do I need to perform a miracle for you to follow me? You should have followed me the last time I was here.
What'd you say, Kurt?
Because 2 days ago, he would have been just as saved. Wasn't this 2 days ago? It's been 2 days. This kid's on his deathbed now. Same city. Well, that was 2 days ago. But he would have been just as sick. Maybe not closer to death, but hey, just as
Right.
sick.
But you gotta think too, they didn't have phones, they didn't have internet,
He
so it was only
could've
by word of mouth.
He could have been praying for his son though, if he truly believed.
Could have.
But they look for physical signs instead of believing exactly on him. They need something in front of them, say, like a flash, hey, this is a sign, it's what you need to do, believe this, but they believe what they see, but not what they see.
You think maybe that we're not told the whole story here? You think maybe that because they had witnessed the first miracle, the water into wine, that maybe some of these people were saying that? They were following him because they had seen it, they had heard about the miracles, and so that's all they were asking. Maybe they were just wanting the miracles, but not wanting Jesus. Don't we do that?
Yep.
We want the blessings, but we don't want Jesus first. We want the whatever, but we don't want to be committed to Christ to honor Him, for Him to honor us.
We don't want any attachment.
We don't want the attachment, yeah. Yeah, we want all the good without all the work.
The obligation of having to feel obligated to repay him for what he's done for us.
Right.
And we still get that with people, not just older people, just anybody on their deathbed that doesn't know Jesus. That's when they find the time to find him.
Yep. Yep.
And that's where I've told you before, I struggle with that somebody that has been faithful all their life is going to have the same ending as somebody that has done anything they wanted their entire life, but then they're in the hospital dying and they reach out to him on their deathbed. And I struggle with that a little bit.
Sure.
That,
And it's okay to struggle with that. It's okay. He's more merciful and gracious than we can understand. And
right.
and He's so far above what we can do. It is hard to understand that.
Yeah. And
What's helped with that is we've been taught, Casey's taught us that we'll have a castle that we'll live in, and they'll more like we live in shacks. That's the way I look at it. They're still going to the same place we are.
Just the rewards are different.
The rewards.
Yeah, a lot different.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I have a saying that really drives me insane. It's, I can live a horrible life, apologize at the end, and get in for free.
Yeah.
Oh,
But we all get in for free.
Well, I mean, that's my say. That's something I've always struggled with, is the fact that I can lead a horrible life, apologize at the end, and get in for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes too, that counteracts some people coming to Christ early in their life, because they know there's always time.
Problem is, there's not.
That's what's got me, is the fact that Casey's got me to understand sometimes there isn't, because I
Yeah,
can walk
you know, they
outside
take
and
that
get hit by a
chance.
car and just have
Yeah,
that
they
chance.
take that chance,
Yeah.
you know, that they're gonna have time,
Yeah.
and sometimes it doesn't always work out that way.
Exactly.
No, lots of times it don't.
Yeah.
More times than not.
well,
Yeah.
these younger kids think, well, I got plenty of time.
Exactly.
I know.
I was one of those.
And so that's what I think. Oh, sorry, was that discussion done?
I think all of us, when we were younger, thought the same thing, you know, it's like, people say you need to start putting away for your retirement, like, nah, I got plenty of time. Next thing you know, something happens, or like me, I go along there,
Yeah.
you're doing good, you know, and then next
Gone.
thing I know, it's all taken away in just a matter of split seconds.
Short time. Yeah.
Which we discussed not too long before that happened. He does one record, we're like, and it wasn't, what, a couple months?
Yeah.
It happened.
Wow.
He showed us.
God has a way of doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at least you finally figured it out.
Several years later.
Some skulls are thicker than others.
Ain't that true?
But I think that's what Jesus was meaning here. I don't think we got the whole picture. I don't think John gave us everything that was being said, you know, all the people that were there and what was going on, what they were chanting, yelling, saying, you know. I just don't think we get the real feel of everything happening. John focused on this miracle, and I think the people were focusing on that as well. And I think that, you know, Jesus was like, hey, you can't just have the blessings without me. You know, it's not about the blessing, it's about me. The effect of me is the blessing. But we get that backwards. We want the blessing without Jesus. But having Jesus, the effect is the blessing. We've got it backwards. And when you're committed to Christ and you love Him and you're sold out, you can just see blessings pour.
But isn't that also the definition of faith, believing without seeing? And these people all have.
They didn't want that, did they? Yeah.
But then if he shows everything in one little part of this, then most of us, I'll be one, might read that little part, well, I know everything I don't need to read in the morning. So it's in different parts, and we gotta, you know what I mean, go back and forth to really get the whole grasp of it, that makes sense.
Definitely. And so the royal official said to him in verse 49, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Isn't that interesting? He calls him sir.
He's still not on his level.
Still not on his lowest, you don't think?
He's still not on his level.
On Jesus' level?
Right. He's still not thinking, I still don't think he really knows who Jesus is. He's seen him do this miracle. But I still don't think he's got that any relationship.
Yeah.
We, if you hadn't seen the first one, it can't be that big a town.
Right.
To where
Right.
you
Had
didn't-
word
you
spread.
didn't hear about it.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, if a Samaritan woman can spread word and bring that many people to Christ in a small farm town, that was the first one.
I agree. And so Jesus said to him, "Go, your son lives." Isn't that something? Just like that. Go, your son lives. The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started off. Now, what's your typical response? What's my typical response? What's most Christians' typical response when Jesus tells us something?
Really?
Really?
Are you sure?
Are you positive? Why don't you just go ahead and give me a sign? Right?
Yeah.
And what did Jesus say just before that? You don't believe unless you see signs and wonders? Jesus, I mean, you know, that's what we do. Jesus says something and then we doubt. And we need to know. But what did this guy do?
He believed and he went.
He believed and he laughed, didn't he? This is his son's life. He believed and he went. What's that hymn? Oh, to take it, oh, to how sweet it is to trust Jesus, to take him at his word. That's that picture right there, isn't it? That's the picture of trusting Jesus and taking him at his word. Isn't that something? What's the result of trusting Jesus and taking him at his word?
Eternal life.
Life, eternal life. This is nothing big for you guys, or you're just like, wow.
Yeah, and it's sinking.
It's sinking in? Okay.
Yeah, but
Call you Mr. Butt.
it don't always work out like that. It don't always work out like that.
Absolutely it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I can do this all night.
You could too.
I will win.
Please.
You want to know how I know it works out like this? Go ahead and ask me.
Go ahead.
Well, ask him.
Ask me.
I'm asking, go ahead. What,
No, say, how do you know?
how do you know?
Because this is God's will, and it always happens in God's will.
It didn't work out for me 32 years ago, Casey.
Understand, but that wasn't God's will. You see what I'm saying?
I know what he's saying.
I do too. We see this as a miracle, but sometimes the miracle happens in a way that we don't see it. Because we don't know what might have happened later. We don't know what could have been, but God does. And that's the hard part of taking him at his word, because there's only one person who can give and take life, and that's God. And so if God makes that choice, there's a reason for it. And that's the same thing as this. Taking him at his word and believing. Does that make sense? No?
I haven't figured out yet, Casey.
And you may not this side of heaven. But what I can assure you is that everything always happens in God's will. It may not be what we like or what we understand or what we can relate to, but God's will is always what ends up happening. And that's not always easy. It's not always painless. But that's the trusting and taking him at his word, that it's better than what we could have hoped for. We have an expected outcome. We want to see something happen. But trusting Jesus and taking him at his word means that what we thought was the best outcome may not have been, and his is. And we got to trust that. May not understand it. May not understand it. May not even like it. But knowing that it's the best. And that's taking him at his word and trusting. And it's not always easy.
Yeah, it's not.
No. And for anybody to pretend it would be easy, no.
God's will at work. That took it, I mean, that was hard, that was tough. The way I was looking at it is that God didn't skimped out in any way in creating. And so your effort should be the same way towards him. You know, that should be your effort.
I have a personal thing too. I can think if I can with John. When my husband died at the age of, he just turned 56. And he had only been a Christian about 7 months. And the only way I could accept it, because we just moved to the farm, we didn't have, you know, and I didn't need that farm with just Harold and I and all that. But he took him. And the only way I could ever accept that was the fact that I knew that Ron was the type of person that God knew that if he didn't take him now, that he had made that decision 7 months ago, and he had surrendered his life to Christ 7 months before. If he hadn't taken me then, he never would have made that decision. I really believe that. I mean, that's awful to say, but I think that's why he took him young. Because he was someone who followed the flesh. And I prayed and prayed and prayed, and I went to church all the time, and I talked to him and all, but nothing. He had 2 very near escapes before, but God brought him through those. But then when he had cancer,
That's what
and
it took.
God told him, this is it, you know. And that's when he made his decision. And that's the only way I could ever accept it. That it was God's will.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would never see him again.
Right. And that's the hard part, is trusting God in His Word. Because sometimes life is just hard. And we go through things and we deal with things that are just unimaginable. And the point I was trying to make, and I'm not sure I did a very good job of, is this man believed. He believed the Word of God. And that's what we got to do. We got to take Him at His Word and trust. No matter what that Word is, whether we like it or we don't, whether we understand it or we don't, we got to believe that God's will is perfect and the best thing for us. Because trust me, there's been a lot of things I've been through in my life I wish I hadn't been through. But God,
He definitely puts stuff in our path that we do not like, and it's for our better. After you get through it, you always look back and say,
yeah,
it's for the better.
yep, absolutely. And he was now going down. His slaves met him, saying that his son was living. And so he inquired of them. Now listen. He believed, and now he doubts. Right? You ever done that before?
When did it happen?
When? When did this happen? I believed. I've had some time to think about it. And you know what happens? But between when we first believe and when we start thinking, you know what happens? We happen. Self gets in the way, the flesh. We get in our own brains and we try to figure out God, and that's when we get ourselves in trouble. In Isaiah we're told that His ways are above our ways. We can't understand what God is doing. Who can know it?
Do you think that's that many was doubting because he asked when it happened? Or he just wanted to say, I knew that's the time it happened. Right when God said it did. I mean, do you suppose he could have been thinking like that, or?
I guess it could have,
He might have been wanting to confirm.
wanting to confirm. I guess it could have, and I'm looking at it from my point of view that if I know something, I'm confident in that, and I say that, and I don't ask. But, and with him being official, I would think that, but I don't know, he might have been. Because my thing is, if I'm not sure, I'm going to ask. You know what I mean?
I was just thinking, I wouldn't have necessarily taken it that I didn't believe or something. I don't know.
Well, I kind of agree with Jeff there, because if you read on, it says that, so the father knew it was at the same hour, and he himself believed in his whole house.
Maybe he wanted to confirm that because he hadn't been home yet to tell everybody that Jesus had said he would live. So he wanted to confirm that it had happened at the same hour so that he could use that as testimony that
Where did you see that, Janice, that his whole house believed?
53,
The end of 53.
Oh, okay.
and his whole house.
I think to question and inquire automatically points doubt. Just a question. If you really believe something, you don't have to ask anybody to confirm.
And that's my thinking too.
Because if he's kind of looking for, I believe 99%, but I'm going to ask, because if he say, no, it didn't happen at the same time, then I know my 1% is good. But just to have that 1% does not mean that you fully believe.
Yeah. And
Why can't we just accept it and go on?
So,
I mean, yeah, but it causes so much frustration and turmoil when and then you'll guess, and then you'll start second guess, and then you'll third guess. And why not just, okay, he did it, awesome, look what he did, he told me, that's it.
Pride.
pride, because he was an official who probably was used to knowing everything, needing details,
And not asking for help from anybody.
not asking for help. Think about the man's personality that plays into this. Think about all that sort of stuff as well. It's easier for a person who has nothing to believe when they're given something than it is for a person living in $1 million mansion to believe. You know what I mean? Somebody who has everything, it's a lot less easier to believe. That's why Jesus says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than a rich man to get saved. And he was a powerful official, so he doubted. At least the way I take it.
Well, he said there, in 51, he said, and the servant met him and told him, saying, thy son liveth. He didn't say, are you sure he is alive? He says, when? To me, it's still saying, is that the same time that Jesus told me that he...
I think it was it Jesus or was it something else that we had done?
Being that he met the servant on the way, he was thinking maybe the servant was on his way to tell him his son was fine before he asked Jesus.
Yeah, maybe.
That's a sign of belief.
You take it the way Jeff and Janice do, that it was a sign of belief?
Something happened years ago, and this happened to Pat Pugh, and she was with a sick child in the hospital, and once the fever broke and it became, and she said, last Sunday morning, did you have prayer? They said, yeah. She prayed for your grandson or whoever it was that was sick. We had prayer at that church at that time. And she wanted to know.
But I see that different because with this situation, he heard Jesus say that. She didn't know, but she had that thought that it was the church praying. You know what I mean?
Inquire.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that there's a right answer here. Well, okay, so there is a right answer. What happened 2,000 years ago is the right answer. I'm not sure that we'll know until we get to heaven, and then this plays out, and we'll be like, oh, okay, you know, it was either Jeff and Janice and Joe, right, or the rest of us. Not that it matters, not that we're trying to fight here. I think it's good discussion, and it's cool because the fever left him. That very time Jesus said that. Wasn't later. It was when Jesus said for something to happen, it happens.
And he didn't have to go down to see the boy.
That's right. That's right. And so in verse 53 it says, so the Father knew, which tells me again that them answering because of his doubt now confirms it to him, now that they answered it. So the Father knew that it was at that hour in which Jesus said to him, your son lives. And he himself believed. The result of that is now he believes and his whole house. So I think he was on the fence. You know, this is the way I see it. He was on the fence. Like he wanted to believe and he believed, but then he didn't. He's like us. Jesus says something, we believe, and then we walk away and we start thinking about it. And then we start questioning. And then we start thinking about, what about this? What about that? What about this? And all of a sudden Satan starts putting thoughts in, all the doubts, and we quit believing. He wanted to believe, but he didn't.
That's what happens when you think too much.
Yep,
Gives you a headache.
it does. And I think if we were all honest with each other, we could all say we've been here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's at.
I think we'd all be lying if we weren't.
Yeah.
And he was a very new believer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so to him, the whole
Sure.
thing was new, and when you're first new with something, there's always those inner conflicts
Oh, yeah.
where is it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So with him confirming that, it confirmed all his doubts and fears, and I think then that let him be free to believe completely.
Yeah. And so it says, this again is the second sign that Jesus performed when he had come out of Judea into Galilee. So, wedding feast, now healing the son. Second miracle. And,
And they were in the same town.
yeah. Yeah. Mine says sign. Does anybody's actually say miracle? Yours does?
Mine says
Mine says
miracle.
Yeah.
If you remember back the series on miracles, what is a miracle? Anybody remember?
Something about
Something that can only be attributed to God stepping in and intervening. Yep. So, good discussion. John, I love you, brother. I'm sorry to pull off a Band-Aid there.
You're fine. It's that time of year, can't be very
Definitely. Alright. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a Joe by his toe. You want to close this?
Sure.
Go for it, Big Joe.
Our kind gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for allowing us to spend this time together studying your word, Lord God. And Lord, we thank you for each one that is gathered here and each family represented. We pray your richest blessings be with each one, dear Lord. And Lord, we just give you all the honor and glory that you so richly deserve by opening up our minds and our thoughts and receiving your word. And Lord, we just thank you for Pastor Casey, and we pray that you be with each one as we go home. And all these things we ask in Christ's holy name. Amen.
Thank you, brother.